Okay, welcome to part 2 of the saving and loading video. If you didn't see the first part, go back and watch that. You kind of need it for this system to work. And otherwise, yeah, let's continue. Wow, nice timing. Very punctual of you. Anyways, now that we're moving on to the big saving and the big loading, let's go back into our save load object. And now we need to consider things like what room are we saving in? I assume most of you probably have games where you have little characters that walk around, or something like that. Regardless, the room saving is important. And saving stuff like our coin count and our item inventory and like lives, anything else like that is important too. So now I'm going to make another big struct that stores all of that kind of information. And this is going to be all the other data that isn't the level loading. And the best thing I could think of to call this is global.stat data. So I imagine this would also be where you'd want to keep, stats, attack power, defense power, all that, all the RPG things the kids like. But anyways, so let's set up just some variables in here, just as default stuff. So I'm gonna set up like a save x, and we'll just say that equals 0. I'm gonna set up a save y, also equals 0, just initializing stuff, and then a save room. And the save room is gonna be interesting, because the way rooms work in Game Maker. So let me go up to my room order here, and you see I have my room initialization room level 1, 2, and 3. If I were to put in room level 1, just like this, all this is this just tells Game Maker what number room this is. So room underscore level 1 literally returns a 1 because our initialization room is 0. Level 1 is 1, level 2 is 2, level 3 is 3. All this is doing is returning the number 1. Nothing else. So, if you start moving level order around or something, because most games you probably don't just have level 1, 2, 3. You probably just have random rooms, for different areas and stuff like that. So you're probably going to move this room order around a lot. And if you do that a lot, this data can kind of get skewed. If you're testing your game and you save the save room as room level 1, you're saving it as the number 1, which means if at any point you need to put this room up here, then this save data will bring you to room number 1, which is level 3 now. This is mostly to save you some headache, but also if you come out with a game and you need to update it and you edit things and you change things, then a lot of players' save data that they'll already have will probably be completely ruined if you don't have the right room. So we're actually gonna use the names of the rooms like this. We're gonna make it a string. So room level 1, because there's a couple really simple functions that we can use to like reverse engineer the room just from the string. And that way it doesn't matter what the room order is, we'll always get the correct room. So just letting you know ahead of time. But anyway, so I've set that data, save x, y, and what room we've saved in. And then I'm also gonna add one called coins, like up there. Set that default to 0, and one called, oh my gosh, items, or even just also call it item inventory. It doesn't really matter. And whenever we do the big save of the game, we're gonna write this global.coins to our stat data's coins, and same with the item inventory. And then whenever we load the game, we're gonna pull them back out. So anyways, now that we have this stat data struct set up, we can go back into our save functions here, and we can create some overall saving functions. So let's just start with the function that we can just call save game. So the first thing we want to do is create an array that we can push all of our data onto. Then we'll have all of our data in one place, and then we can save that array as a JSON. So first, I'm just going to call this var save array, and we'll make it empty at first. We don't have any data in it yet, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. And whenever we're saving the game like this, as you know right now, the way our save load object works is the room that we're in only gets saved whenever we walk out of it, which is totally fine. We can just go ahead and save the room we're in again. So save the room you're in, and we can just call save room really quick. Because if we don't go ahead and call this again whenever we're calling the big save game, then the room that we're in will revert back to how it was the last time we exited it. So first we want to do that. Then we can go ahead and set and save stat related stuff. So let's do our save x, our save y, and our save room. So x is our global dot stat data, and we can set its save x variable as, I'm going to set it as the player's x, which I've named object obj underscore player. Do the same thing with the y. So object stat data save y equals object player y. And then we'll do the save room dot save underscore rm. And we can do that with room get name of the room that we're currently in. And this will get us the name of the room as a string. And I already explained why that is what we want to do. Oop, I just saw that I mistyped that there. It could have been a little messy. Always check your spelling. And then we save our coins and items. And that's easy. So statdata.coins is just going to equal what our global.coins are. And same thing with our item inventory. There we go. Now all this data is inside of global.statdata. So we can just put stat data in our array, and we can just use that with array push. Very, very simple function that just adds whatever value you tell it to the end of an array that already exists, which for us that's empty. So our very first entry, or entry 0, is just going to be the struct stat data. Then even easier, we have save all the room data, and we'll just do that the same way. And we've already set all that with our saving and loading functions. So we'll just do the same thing with global.level data. Misspelled again. There we go. And now we have all the data we need to save our game inside of save array, and now we need to do the actual saving. Okay, so now what we need is we need a file name to save everything as. We need to convert our save array into a JSON string, and then we're going to write that JSON string to a buffer, and then use that buffer to save the file, and then get rid of the buffer because we don't need it anymore. This buffer method is mostly used because it's really compatible with different platforms, not just Windows, and it's pretty easy to do. So yeah, let's just go through all those steps. So first, our file name. So we're going to say var underscore file name, and I'm just going to call this savedata.sav. You can name it pretty much anything you want to. Then we need to get our JSON string. So JSON equals, then we're going to use the function JSON stringify, which converts any struct or any array into a JSON string. So we're going to do that with our save array. And then we need to create the buffer, write to it, save it, and then delete it. These are things I am not super well versed on what they're actually doing. I know a little bit about it, but not enough to speak with any kind of authority and educate on this subject matter. If you're interested in it, definitely read up more on it, because all you're about to get from me is I'm just going to show you what letters to type, because that is exactly how I learned it. Like I mentioned in the intro of this video, the main purpose of this video is to show a couple of things that are useful additions to this system, like the going between different rooms and saving rooms. A lot of the core stuff was built on stuff that really, really talented other people did, which is how I learned how to program. I've been doing this for years now, but everything I learned from YouTube circa 2016, 2017, and so on. So again, check the description for links to other channels and stuff. It's always great to get other people giving you multiple explanations on stuff, because maybe one way will click a little bit more and you'll really get behind why something works the way it does. But anyways, back to the thing. Okay, so yeah, here's how we create the buffer. This line right here. Just make sure you copy it all right. Then we need to write our JSON to the actual buffer. So buffer write, we're going to write it to our buffer. Our type is a string, and then we are writing the JSON string to it. And now we can actually save it. So just use the simple function buffer save, and we will save this buffer as our file name, not fail name. And then because buffers take up memory, we want to make sure we don't waste that and cause a memory leak. And so we just need to delete it after that. So buffer delete our buffer. Easy peasy, more or less. So this is what our save game function looks like. Make sure you have everything in order before you move on. And now we almost need to make a reverse function for this, which is how the loading will work. So now let's create our function for load game. And now we need to start with loading our buffer and then reading it to get the JSON, and then converting the JSON back to that array that we had. So let's say loading our saved data, and then we're gonna get our file name, so var file name. It's getting late. And this needs to be the same string that we had up here. We need to read the same file name as the one that we saved it as, obviously. So just make sure that's the same. And if our file doesn't exist, we want to just go ahead and get out of here before we try and do anything with something that doesn't exist, because then we'll get an error and the game will crash. So if our file doesn't exist, then we can just exit. So now we're going to load the buffer, get the JSON, and then delete the buffer again to free up the memory. So we'll say var buffer, and we're going to use buffer load from our file name. Then to get our JSON, we're going to have to read the buffer. So buffer read this buffer, and the data type is a string. And now that we have the JSON, we can go ahead and delete the buffer. And then we can essentially, I'm going to say unstringify and get the save data array. So I'll call this var load array, and we're going to use the function JSON parse, which is basically unstringify. I just really like this word a lot. And now we have our array back. So now we can set the data. So we're going to say set the data in our game to match our loaded data down here. Okay. And once again, this is just kind of us doing the opposite thing. So we just pushed these big data structs into our array that we just got back. And so let's see. We can say our global.statData equals array get. We're going to look through our load array, and we're going to look at the first position of our load array. So obviously array get is just get a value from an array at a certain position in that array. And our first entry into that array is our stat data, and our second one is the level data. So first one's stat data, and we can do the same thing with our level data, and we are in the second entry of the array for level data, and now we have those back. So great. And now that we have our stat data back, we can reload in our coins and item inventory and whatever that stuff would be. So like this. So global.coins equals our global.statData.coins, and same with our item inventory. And great. So now we have loaded all of our data back. The last thing we need to do is actually put us in the correct room in the correct space, put our character where they need to be. So use our new data to get back to where we need to be. Let's say go to the correct room, and here's how we will get our room asset. So I'm just going to put this in a local variable and call it var load room. And we're going to use this function called asset get index. And this basically means you can put in a string name and it will return that asset index. So I could say object player like this, and it would return the object index of the actual object player. And because we've been saving our save room as a string, we can just pull that from our stat data. So pull that from global.statData.saveRoom. And now we have the correct asset. And so we can just call the function room goto, and we'll say we'll go to loading room. Perfect. And then we can kind of load the player in the same way that we loaded the other stuff. Now, my player is a persistent object. I assume most of you making games where you can walk between rooms have a persistent player object and not just a bunch of players in different rooms. So much like I was talking about with the initialization room, you sometimes kind of have to do some little tricks to make sure the player doesn't get all doubled up and stuff. I'm sure you've already figured it out for yourself because you're here. But basically, just for a safety type thing, I'm going to load the player in a similar way to where I loaded the other stuff. So I'm going to search for a player object if there is one, and then just go ahead and get rid of it, and then load my new player. So I'm going to say if instance exists object player, instance destroy object player, and then I need to create a new player. So instance create layer, or however you create objects. I need to grab the save x and save y from our stat data. So there, the x and y, just any layer, whatever. And then I'm going to create an object player right there. And just a side thing to note, in my original level, in the creation code of this player instance, I just have it say if there's more than one player, get rid of myself, which this is how I handle the player walking out and walking back in, so that way there aren't two players. But back to our loading. We're basically done with our loading here, except in the same way that we wanted to make sure that we actually saved the room whenever we did the big save, we want to make sure we load the room whenever we do the big load, okay? Because basically whenever I was testing this, if you hit the load button, even whenever using the room go-to function, it does seem to skip over the room start event. So let's just run load room again. Say manually load the room. Okay, before we test this, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now, there is an issue with this. So if you find this issue, just be patient. I'm going to talk about it in a second. But first, we are in a state where we can test stuff now. So let's add a way to save and load. So I'm going to open up our object save load, and I'm going to add a step event. Okay, so I set it up like this. If I press 1, it'll save my game. And if I press 4, it'll load my game. You could make this S and L if you wanted to, but I'm just doing this so I can show the different file systems. And ultimately, it's going to be different in your game. You're probably not going to keep a very simple system like this. You're probably going to want to combine it with a menu or something like that. So anyways, now's the time to check everything. Like I said, there is an issue with this, but I'll get to it. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to grab a couple smiley faces. I'm going to push this around. I'm going to grab these 3 items. Walk out. Walk back in this room. This room is still good. I'm going to grab a couple more coins from over here. Maybe push this down a bit. And then I'm going to walk into room 3 and be up in this corner. I'm going to hit 1 to save. Okay. And another thing that's important to note is we have 9 coins, 3 items, and we're in room 3, and we're in that position. So now I'm just going to move this again, grab the rest of these coins, go in here, move this stuff around, grab these other items, and now let's see what happens whenever we try and load the game. Okay, we're back in the right place. We have 9 coins, 3 items again. All that's still there. All right. So overall, it seems like we're working pretty good. Now I'm going to restart, and I'm going to show you the issue that we do have here. So I'm going to grab these 4 coins. I'm going to save in here, walk into a different room. I'm going to grab these coins, and then I'm going to load the game. Now my coin count went back to where it was, and these went away. All right, funny story, guys. I thought there was an issue with this, and in fact, in my regular project file that I did to test all this, it was very easy to recreate issue. Like, I knew exactly how to recreate it, and it's not happening here. So either I did something slightly more right in this, or it has something to do with the multiple files. Okay, so yeah, well, then let me now show you how to alter the save and load games for multiple files. This is super fast and easy, like massively fast and easy. So let me open up my very tiny save game function. Okay, so now we're just gonna put in an argument, and we're gonna call it underscore file num, and we can put in a default value of 0 or whatever. Doesn't really matter. Should probably put in a default value. And then we're going to change our file name down here to include this file number. And that's very easy. So first we can separate this save data in .save like this. This is still the same string. I've just separated it in 2 things. And this also means I can add something else. So I'm going to add string file num. So now it will save as save data 0.sav or whatever number I put up here. And now we just need to reflect this in load game as well. So let's add that optional argument and call it file num, set its default to 0, and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, great. Now I just need to add that little bit of functionality back over here. So I'm going to make these default 0. They're already defaulted at 0. I don't have to put that in, but now I'm going to add 1 and 2. So now if I press 2, it'll save as save data 1.sav, and if I press 3, save data 2.sav, and then I need to load them the same way. So 4, 5, and 6 load save games 0, 1, and 2, and 1, 2, and 3 save 0, 1, and 2. And let's test that out and see if my issue is there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab those 2 and check save number 1. Then for save number 2, I'm going to grab these 2 items and then 2 coins in here and then create my save number 2, which I just did. And then I'm going to scoot this up and stand in room 3 for save number 3. Okay, So now if I hit 4, I'm loaded back here. Everything is the same. Now if I hit 2, or no, not 2, sorry, that would override it. If I hit 5, all right, all this is looking good. And then if I hit 6, I load 3, I'm in my room 3 in the right position. This is scooted up. All the other stuff is done. Okay, yeah. So now I'm going to try and attempt that weird thing one more time. Okay, yeah, I am getting the issue again. And I can't tell if it's because it's late and I was being dumb and I was actually seeing the issue a second ago, but I was just ignoring it because I was being stupid. Or if it does have something to do with using the different file names and different buttons and stuff like that. Either way, I will demonstrate it to you now. So I've collected this whole bottom smile, and I'm going to save it to my save file number 1. Saving it a bunch. Okay. If I walk over here, and if I load it, I'm over here. If I walk in this room and I load it, look down over here, all is fine. Now, interestingly, if I collect these coins and I load this, and I load the game from this room, my coins go back down, the smile is gone. Okay, and it's not happening again, but I swear it was a second ago. I'm not I'm not crazy. Well, the point is it happens sometimes, clearly, and that's an issue. Basically what the issue is, sometimes if you load from a room that isn't the room that you saved in, sometimes the room that you load from, so like level 2 right now, sometimes if I were to load like this save file like this, sometimes these coins would be gone, as if I had collected them, but I hadn't. Part of the reason this is happening is because we have this save room function just happening at the end of any room, which means that even whenever we load the game, we're going to a new room, which is the loaded save room. And so this is triggering the save room function. And then I think because we're loading and doing all this stuff at once, I guess sometimes it gets confused and it maybe saves the new room data onto the file. If it sounds like I'm rambling or what I'm saying doesn't make much sense, that's probably my fault. But basically all I'm saying is I was able to pinpoint the issue to having this save room in our room end event. So I did something very sneaky. This is a sneaky thing that could also come in handy for other stuff. So I created a variable called skip room save, and by default it's set to false. And this is just going to be a variable that we can set from anywhere to tell this object, should we skip room saving? So if I go into this room end event, I could say if skip room save is equal, only if it's equal to false. So only if we shouldn't be skipping do we save the room. And then we can just set it back here at the room end event anytime. So we'll set it back to false every time the room ends. So basically this means that whenever we're loading the game, we can set this variable to true. So that way this won't run, because it doesn't need to. Whenever we're loading a new game, all of our rooms should just be using the save data from that big save file. So we don't need to save the room that we're in, because we're not storing this information anywhere. Except, I guess, accidentally we're storing it sometimes in the file that we're loading. This variable can also be really useful for maybe there are certain types of rooms that you don't want the player to save in. Most games have dedicated save rooms, but, you know, some games have like auto-saving and dynamic saving and stuff like that. And so having a variable like this is probably nice to where if the player is in an area that you don't want them to save and load the game a bunch of times, because maybe they can break something. So anyways, now that we have this variable, we can go into our big loading here. And I'm just going to put it right under whenever we go to our new loading room. So we're just going to say, make sure our object save load doesn't save the room we're exiting from. And to do that, we just have to set that new skip room save variable to true in this object. Then we'll go into our new room. Once the room end event triggers, it won't save that room at all, regardless. But then it'll automatically set this back, so it'll start auto-saving again. So it'll start saving our rooms again so we can walk back and forth between them properly. And in all of my testing, this fixed that issue completely. Which weirdly enough, in this project, I was getting the issue a lot less, but in my other one, I could recreate it every single time. And once I added this, it completely fixed that issue. So let's just test and make sure that that's still the case. Okay, I've been sitting here testing it for a while. And yes, I do believe that has completely fixed everything. So pretty much, yeah, there you have it. A saving loading system that works in the midst of the game to help you save and load the levels, just walking between them, and then an actual saving system where you can write files. And up here you can see this is the path that you would take to find all these. I have the 0, 1, and 2, which are the 3 files I had, and then this one's just save data because this was before I added the multiple file system. So yeah, if you ever need to delete them, you can just delete them in here. Do whatever you want, have fun, go make yourself a video game. Okay, so congrats, you got a saving and loading system. If this video helped you out and you like the way I do things, the best things you could do to help me out would be to subscribe to see the future videos I'm going to make, which my uploads will get a lot more consistent once I'm done with the game I'm working on called Starcross Starcade, which happens to be another way you can help me out. You can go wishlist that right now on Steam. It's a cool hack and slash platformer action brawler slicey game with a bunch of bosses and a few extra neat little things in addition to that. So yeah, go wishlist that. If it's out, buying it would be even better. Then of course there's the various social media type stuff. By various, I mostly just mean Twitter and Discord, both of which I will be more active on once Starcade is done. Takes up a lot of time, game development. It really does. And if you go to those places, then you can also keep up with my big game called Rosa Starcross. Yeah, got a lot of stuff going on, including this. So yeah, thanks for watching. Nice job getting to the end, and go have fun with your saving loading system. Go make fun games. Okay, bye-bye.